Yesterday, the first art build pack was released in the form of the Late War Germany pack, and today we're going to be looking at post-war designs. And this one has a lot of vehicles, so sadly I cannot pick them all out in a Tiger run a little bit. I can only really just show them off in here, otherwise the video will get a bit too long. This pack will contain tanks all the way from 1945, right after the war, 1946, all the way up to 2019 revealed vehicles. So let's get right into it. So we're starting out with a almost experimental vehicle, really, the BMD-4, meant for airdrops and being amphibious. It is a really very light tank. Firepower is very decent at a 100mm gun that can also launch missiles. And also was supposed to have a 30mm coax autocannon right next to it, but that is not modeled in the model right here, because it would have no way of rotating alongside with the barrel. And yeah, it's a really quite simple design. And that's it. We're gonna go move over to the next build. Both of these are made by the same creator, Nova. And yeah, he's been got a lot of very nice builds here, part of another part of this pack. So the BMP-1 is another Russian or Soviet vehicle, and this one was a infantry fighting vehicle or armored personnel carrier, having a 76mm gun, all again being amphibious, but in this case having a rear area right here to deposit troops out of. And very nice design, even though kind of the iconic wooden log on the back, of course. Engine decks all very nicely designed. After that, we're going to move over to the IS-3, a heavy tank. This one has a very unique pike nose design that you don't really see in any other vehicle. And mounting this gigantic 122mm gun, it really packs quite a punch. Of course, both those things come with the big downside of being very heavy. Having very heavy means that it's not gonna be very fast. But does it even matter if you're not fast if you can't be stopped? I don't think so. After that, we're gonna be stepping away from the builds made by Nova so far, and we're gonna move over to the IS-4, made by Artiv01. This one's actually a bit smaller, but it will actually be the same size in real life. Gun mounting on 22mm gun, but getting rid of the pike nose, interestingly enough, with this design. And it kind of went a bit downhill there. Like, okay, it had less of a shot trap on the turret, but instead came a shot trap in a big driver's hatch, kinda. So, gain some, you lose some with this design. And the Soviets went back to the pike nose with lighter AIS tanks designs. And now we're gonna go over to German or Western German tanks, with the Leopard one being made by Excalibur 117 here. Very neat little design, good mobility. It's an engine deck even. Very nice. You can't do that normally as Sprocket, so advanced building techniques were used to achieve that. If you actually want to know a little bit about how advanced building techniques work, be sure to check out that video that I made for how to do just that. So this one was one of the first tanks to feature the 105mm L7 rifled cannon, which was the mainstay of basically any Western army during the time that it was available, and until it was replaced by the 120mm, which we're going to go look at next, with the Leopard 2A6, again made by Excalibur. This is the second most modern tank currently in this pack, and yeah, it features the very long 120mm smoothbore gun, and that's actually a improved version of the original 120 that initially replaced the 105. And yeah, very modern tank, a huge arrowhead nose in the front, which actually was meant to may be longer than any APDS projectiles that would be impacting there. destabilizing the kinetic penetrator and just completely degrading its armor penetration potential. Whereas right behind that would be the standard armor that still has to be penetrated as well. That said, the armor protection of this vehicle is not quite realistic. And yeah, that said, we're gonna move on over to the next build because, if this armor protection is not that actually had would not be simulatable in Sprocket right now. And we're gonna now go over to the Leopard 2K, which was the prototype for the Leopard 2, featuring the shorter 120mm gun that all of the Leopards 2 use up until the TY6 model. And this one has a very nice turret overhang in the back. Again, another engine deck. This one was made by Apollo 1641. And yeah, this one ended up not being accepted, and instead having to be modified before the first model of Leopard 2 was accepted. Very nice tank, and actually more well known than you would think, thanks to the game War Thunder, where it is featured in. This design even has a bunch of smoke launchers on the sides. Very appreciating of the tiny little details here, guys. Even has a rangefinder. Again, a ton of tiny little details that's gone into builds like this is what makes packs like these so amazing. So now we're going to go back to a design by Nova, the M113, which is not even a tank. It is a armored personnel carrier. And this one was just designed to deliver troops to the front line. They would come out the back. There's a big hatch in the front for the engine to repair that quickly if anything happens with it. And it's armored with a single 50 caliber machine gun on the roof. And that's it. But generally, if you're supported by enough tanks, you don't really need much more than that. And with that, we're going to move over to the M1A1 Abrams, the most modern American tank we have in this pack. And this one is again made by Excalibur. And this is basically the American variant of the Leopard 2A6, or the other tanks that we're going to see later down the line with the T62s. Or I think this one would be more of an equivalent of T80 or T90. That's all we got in the pack for Soviets. Sadly, this tank doesn't quite have the horsepower that the original had, because we cannot install a gasoline turbine, which the original design has. So it's gonna have to do with quite a bit less power. But it is still a very nice design, and it's also very well protected actually, with 400mm on the front right here, 700mm on the front hull. This design actually decided to try and emulate the armor protection of a tank like this for at least the front plate. After that, we're gonna move on over to the M48A1 Patton, basically the IS-3 for America, being released not many years after the war ended, featuring a 90mm gun, and yeah, it was a very well liked design, produced in very high numbers. Sadly, because it's completely round turret, it is not completely accurate in Sprocket, because there's no real way to completely make the turret into a dome. Moving on over to a Merkava Mark III, which is an Israeli tank. And this one was actually very well liked because of its crew protection. In the front, there was a lot of stuff between the crew in the back and the stuff enemy shells coming from the front. The engine was in between there. There was some internal armor compartments and all that stuff, giving it a very, very high crew protection rate. And it was very rare for anybody to die inside of a Merkava. That's it. Sadly, it isn't quite as mobile as the Merkava. Of course, these very heavy designs. This one is 88 tons. Will require a very powerful engine, but that is not quite where we're getting right here. And yeah, that's it. We're gonna move on over to the Object 490A. I actually don't know too much about this one. It was a Soviet prototype tank, and it was gifted to me without too much of an explanation what it was. So if actually some people have like some info on this thing, I would love to learn about it. Again, made by Excalibur, just like all the designs before this. Um, Very nice design. It is just very cool to see this kind of like unique shape on the turret right here, which you wouldn't really see without any advanced building techniques. And yeah, that is the Object 490A. Then on to the most modern tank in this pack, the T-14 Armata, again made by Excalibur. This one has an active protection system right here in the bottom of the turret. Let's see if I can get you guys a good angle right there. There's launchers in the bottom. That's an active protection system, meaning that this thing can actually take down enemy projectiles when they are shot at the tank. And this one is actually a completely remotely operated turret, meaning that all the crew are sitting in the hull very safe. And basically, this thing is not possible to take out if it's completely held down. Because even if you were to completely obliterate the turret and take it out, it will just retreat to safety and get it self-repaired, and there's no way of actually harming the crew. And because the crew is, of course, not in the turret, they will never bail out anyways, even if the turret was getting shot at. And now back to barely post-war with the Soviets, the T-44-100. There was a modification of the T-44, implementing the more powerful 100mm gun that they had at that time, as well as adding some side-skirt armor. This was like the first real design. I was starting to show the design philosophies of the Soviets, and you will see this kind of design in like evolve over time from the T-34, which had both side armor angled and the front armor angled, to this design, which ditched the side armor angles because this wasn't needed. It took up too much internal space. And we're gonna move on over to the T-54, which actually had a completely dome turret. And again, the same kind of frontal armor profile as the T-44, and still mounting the 100mm gun. Of course, the round turret isn't completely like recreatable in this game, so we got as close as we were able to. And yeah, it is still very nice looking. Thank you, Excalibur, for the T-54. But we also have a T-54M, which was an upped armored variant with some explosive reactive armor on the front of the turret, as well as on the front of the hull. And they also actually had composite layers in there as well, especially on like the T-62s and T-72 variants. They would put these big blocks of composite armor on the turret cheeks. This one just has some simple panels right there for now. Still mounting the 100mm gun, sadly. So that was actually one of the biggest points of upgrading with the later variants. And here we got a T-72, which, if I recall correctly, has a 225mm gun. Yeah, 125. And this one already has complete internal composite armor. Has the smoke launchers on the side. And overall, it is a very nice build. This one actually still has the mobility of the MVT, but it sadly lacks the autoloader, giving it a very long reload time. This is actually one of the few tanks that would be autoloaded alongside a few of the handful other tanks in here, such as the BMD, the T-14, and some of these right here. The T-90 is one of the more modern tanks here as well. Not quite up to par to a 2A6 or an A1 Abrams. Well, maybe perhaps an A1 Abrams this thing could take out, but 2A6 it will probably lose against, as it was, well, it was pretty modern at the time. It got outdated pretty quickly, and it had to be modernized quite a bit. It's still in use, actually, in limited quantities, while the now Russian army is looking at replacing it with the D-14 Armata. But again, the American army is also seeking to replace the M1 Abrams, so they're all kind of going into transitional phase into new design strategies. This was one of the last designs with the iconic, simple tank design, compact tank design that the Soviets abided to. It had very little turret gun depression, and it's very compact auto-loading design. They're kind of moving on from that now. That is the T90A. And now we have the ZTQ-15, which is another tank I don't know too much about. And so again, if people can actually tell me a bit more about this tank in the description below, I would love to have more information on it. Still made by Excalibur. Excalibur actually having like almost half, well, more than half the builds of this pack are by him. Honestly, astonishing with how much work he can get done. Of course, everybody has their specializations. Other packs have also been dominated by certain builders. And this one's by Excalibur here. Very mobile tank. It feels like a Leopard 2A6, or pretty close to it, but it feels like it's more of a light tank with its mobility and its fast turret reversed. Again, I honestly I don't know what the tank itself actually is. Pretty sure it's a Chinese tank, just like the ZTZ-99A right here, which is again like a Chinese tank, very modern as well actually. And its own features and smoke launchers on the sides, composite armor in the front, and another 125mm gun. With that, that is the complete breakdown and showcase of the post-war tanks. It's a very large pack. Download will be in the description down below. And if you guys want to know how to install these tanks, be sure to check out my late war Germany video, as I already went into how to install these in that video. That said, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll catch you guys all in the next one.